Jimmy Haslam just walked into a press conference that nobody expected and dropped two bombs that are going to reshape the Cleveland Browns and the entire city for the next 50 years. First, a $100 million settlement that's been kept secret for over a year, involving a lawsuit that could have destroyed Haslam's ownership of the team if it went public. And second, the official announcement of a $2.4 billion stadium project in Brook Park that's going to rip the Browns out of downtown Cleveland and create the most controversial sports facility in America. The details of the settlement involve allegations so serious that Haslam's legal team has been working around the clock to bury them. The stadium deal includes taxpayer money, shady backroom agreements with politicians, and a development plan that will financially devastate downtown businesses while making Haslam a fortune. And the way Haslam revealed all of this, with zero remorse, zero acknowledgement of the damage he's causing, shows exactly why the Cleveland Browns have been dysfunctional for over a decade. This press conference just changed everything, and the fallout is going to be absolutely catastrophic. February 12th, 2026, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Jimmy Haslam stands at a podium inside the Cleveland Browns headquarters in Berea, Ohio. Behind him are architectural renderings of a massive domed stadium. To his left sits his legal team. To his right, city officials from Brook Park. And in front of him, a room full of reporters who have no idea they're about to witness one of the most shocking announcements in Cleveland sports history. Haslam clears his throat and begins speaking, and within the first 60 seconds, he drops a revelation that sends the entire room into chaos. Before I discuss our exciting stadium plans, I want to address a legal matter that we've been handling privately for the past 14 months. The Haslam Sports Group has reached a settlement in the amount of $100 million to resolve allegations related to business practices involving the Cleveland Browns organization. This settlement includes no admission of wrongdoing, and all parties have agreed to confidentiality regarding the specific details. The room erupts. Reporters start shouting questions, cameras flash, and Haslam, stone-faced, refuses to elaborate beyond reading a prepared legal statement that his attorneys clearly wrote. A $100 million settlement, kept secret for over a year, involving the Cleveland Browns, and Haslam won't say what it was for. Let me take you inside what this settlement is actually about, because the leaked information that's starting to surface is absolutely explosive. According to sources who've been briefed on the case, the $100 million settlement involves a lawsuit filed by a coalition of former Browns employees, including coaches, scouts, and front office personnel, who alleged systematic workplace misconduct, discrimination, and financial improprieties within the organization. The lawsuit, which was filed under seal in federal court in early 2025, claimed that Haslam and the Haslam Sports Group created a toxic work environment where employees were harassed, underpaid, and in some cases illegally terminated for refusing to participate in unethical business practices. Specific allegations in the lawsuit, according to sources, included: first, claims that Haslam personally pressured front office employees to manipulate salary cap reporting to the NFL league office in ways that violated league rules. The lawsuit alleged that Haslam wanted to hide the true financial commitments of certain contracts to create flexibility that shouldn't have existed under the salary cap system. Second, allegations of racial discrimination in hiring and firing practices. The lawsuit claimed that qualified minority candidates were passed over for key positions in favor of less qualified white candidates, and that minority employees were paid significantly less than their white counterparts for doing the same jobs. Third, accusations of sexual harassment and a hostile work environment, particularly involving female employees who alleged they were subjected to inappropriate comments, unwanted advances, and retaliation when they reported misconduct. And fourth, accusations that Haslam used Brown's resources and staff for personal business ventures unrelated to the team, essentially having taxpayer-funded employees working on private projects that benefited Haslam financially but had nothing to do with football operations.
These are serious allegations, the kind that, if proven in court, could have resulted in Haslam being forced to sell the team by the NFL. The league has strict conduct policies for owners, and systematic violations like those alleged in this lawsuit would have been grounds for removal.
But Haslam's legal team, led by some of the most expensive attorneys in the country, negotiated a settlement before any of the evidence went public. The $100 million was split among approximately 30 plaintiffs, with each receiving between $2 and $5 million, depending on the severity of their claims. In exchange for the money, all plaintiffs signed non-disclosure agreements, preventing them from ever discussing the case publicly. The settlement agreement was filed under seal, meaning court documents aren't publicly accessible. And Haslam insisted on language that explicitly states the settlement is not an admission of guilt or wrongdoing. This is how billionaires make problems disappear. Throw enough money at it, force everyone to sign NDAs, seal the records, and move on like nothing happened. But here's the problem. The settlement was supposed to stay secret forever. Haslam's legal team spent months ensuring that every document was sealed, every plaintiff was bound by ironclad confidentiality agreements, and every trace of the case was buried. So why is Haslam revealing it now? According to sources, Haslam had no choice. Someone involved in the case, possibly one of the plaintiffs or their attorneys, was threatening to leak details to the media despite the NDA. Haslam's legal team learned about the potential leak last week and advised him to get ahead of the story by announcing the settlement himself on his own terms. By revealing it during a press conference about the stadium deal, Haslam is trying to bury the settlement news under the much bigger story of the $2.4 billion Brook Park project. It's a classic PR tactic. Drop the bad news alongside something massive so the media focuses on the shiny new thing instead of the scandal. And speaking of the stadium deal, what Haslam announced after the settlement revelation is going to change Cleveland forever. Haslam unveiled plans for a $2.4 billion retractable roof stadium in Brook Park, a suburb located about 20 miles south of downtown Cleveland, near the airport. The stadium would seat 65,000 fans, include 150 luxury suites, and be surrounded by a massive mixed-use development featuring hotels, restaurants, retail shops, office buildings, and residential units. Haslam described it as a world-class sports and entertainment destination that will transform Northeast Ohio and position the Cleveland Browns as one of the premier franchises in the NFL for generations to come. But the details of how this project is being financed reveal a level of corporate welfare and taxpayer exploitation that's absolutely disgusting. According to the financial breakdown Haslam presented, the $2.4 billion cost will be covered through the following sources. First, $800 million in public financing from the city of Brook Park and Cuyahoga County. This includes bonds that taxpayers will be paying off for the next 30 years, tax increment financing that diverts property tax revenue away from schools and public services, and direct cash payments from local government. Second, $600 million in state of Ohio incentives and grants. This is taxpayer money from across the state being used to help a billionaire build a private stadium. Third, $400 million in NFL league loans and financing. The league offers low-interest loans to teams for stadium projects, which Haslam will pay back over time. And fourth, $600 million from Haslam's own pocket. That's his actual investment, just 25% of the total cost. So taxpayers are covering $1.4 billion of a $2.4 billion stadium, while Jimmy Haslam, a billionaire, is only putting up $600 million. And here's the kicker. Haslam will own the stadium and all the surrounding development, meaning he'll profit from every dollar generated, while taxpayers get nothing except the privilege of having a football team in their region. The outrage from Cleveland residents has been immediate and intense. Within minutes of Haslam's announcement, social media exploded with anger. The hashtag #NoTaxpayerStadiums started trending nationally.
Cleveland City Council members who weren't informed about the deal in advance issued statements condemning it. But the most devastating impact is what this means for downtown Cleveland. First Energy Stadium, the current home of the Browns, sits on the lakefront in downtown Cleveland. It's part of a sports and entertainment district that includes the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, restaurants, bars, and other businesses that depend on Browns games for survival. On 10 Sundays every fall, plus potential playoff games, downtown Cleveland is packed with 70,000 fans. Those fans eat at restaurants, they drink at bars, they park in garages, they stay in hotels, they spend money that keeps downtown businesses alive. If the Browns move to Brook Park, all of that economic activity disappears. Restaurants will close, bars will shut down, hotels will lose revenue. Thousands of jobs will be eliminated, and downtown Cleveland, which has struggled for decades to revitalize, will be dealt a blow that it may never recover from. Cleveland Mayor Justin Bibb held an emergency press conference immediately after Haslam's announcement and said, "Jimmy Haslam just betrayed the city of Cleveland. He's taking our team, our economic engine, and our identity and moving it to the suburbs so he can build a private empire with our tax dollars. This is corporate greed at its absolute worst, and we will fight this with every legal tool we have."
Bibb also revealed something that Haslam conveniently left out of his presentation. The Browns' current lease at First Energy Stadium runs through 2028. The city of Cleveland invested over $150 million in renovations to that stadium in recent years, based on assurances from Haslam that the team would stay downtown long term. If Haslam breaks that lease and moves to Brook Park, the city could sue for breach of contract and potentially demand repayment of the renovation costs plus damages. Legal experts estimate that a lawsuit could cost Haslam hundreds of millions of dollars. But Haslam's legal team has apparently already prepared for this. According to sources, the Brook Park Stadium deal includes provisions where the state of Ohio would indemnify Haslam against lawsuits from Cleveland, meaning taxpayers would cover his legal costs and any potential settlements. It's unbelievable. Haslam is using public money to build a stadium, using public money to protect himself from lawsuits, and he'll pocket all the profits while cities and taxpayers absorb all the risk and cost. The details of how Haslam secured the Brook Park deal are also shady as hell. According to investigative reporting from local Cleveland journalists, Haslam and his representatives have been secretly meeting with Brook Park city officials for over 2 years. These meetings were not publicly disclosed, they were not open to the public, and they resulted in agreements that heavily favor Haslam at the expense of Brook Park taxpayers. Brook Park is a small city with a population of less than 20,000 people. It doesn't have the resources or infrastructure to handle a stadium project of this magnitude. But Haslam convinced them by promising economic development, job creation, and increased tax revenue. The reality, according to analysts who've studied similar stadium deals across the country, is that Brook Park will get very little benefit while taking on massive financial risk. The tax increment financing structure means that any new property tax revenue generated by the development will go toward paying off the bonds, not to the city. The jobs created will mostly be low-wage service jobs in restaurants and retail, and the infrastructure costs, roads, sewers, water, electricity, will fall on Brook Park taxpayers. Meanwhile, Haslam will own everything. The stadium, the hotels, the restaurants, the retail spaces. He'll collect rent from tenants. He'll collect parking fees from fans. He'll control every revenue stream. And when he eventually sells the team or the development, he'll make billions in profit. This is how billionaires exploit small communities. They dangle promises of economic growth while structuring deals that guarantee they get rich while taxpayers foot the bill. The reaction from Ohio state legislators has been mixed. Some, particularly those who represent districts near Brook Park and who've received campaign donations from Haslam, are supporting the project. They're calling it economic development and job creation.
But others, especially those from Cleveland and Cuyahoga County, are furious. State Senator Matt Dolan, who represents parts of Cleveland, said, "This is one of the most egregious examples of corporate welfare I've seen in my career. We're asking teachers to do more with less, we're cutting social services, we're struggling to fund infrastructure, but somehow we have $600 million to give to a billionaire for a football stadium. It's obscene."
The Cleveland Browns Players Association, the union representing current players, has also weighed in. In a statement, the union said, "While we support investments in world-class facilities, we are concerned about the impact this move will have on the city of Cleveland and the communities that have supported this team for decades. Players want to represent a city, not a suburb. That's a subtle but important distinction. The Cleveland Browns are the Cleveland Browns, not the Brook Park Browns. The team's identity is tied to the city. Moving to the suburbs fundamentally changes what the franchise represents." There's also a racial and economic justice element to this story that's being discussed in community forums and by civil rights organizations. Downtown Cleveland is accessible by public transportation. Fans from lower-income neighborhoods, many of them communities of color, can take buses or trains to games without needing a car. Brook Park is not accessible by public transportation. You need a car to get there. That means lower-income fans, who are disproportionately Black and Latino, will be priced out of attending games. The new stadium will cater to wealthy suburban fans who can afford luxury suites and expensive tickets, while working-class fans who've supported the team through decades of losing will be left behind. This is gentrification and economic exclusion disguised as sports development, and community organizers are already planning protests and advocacy campaigns to fight it. As of right now, February 12, 2026, the Brook Park Stadium deal is not finalized. It still requires approval from Brook Park City Council, Cuyahoga County Council, and the Ohio State Legislature. Each of those bodies will have to vote on whether to approve the public financing, and Cleveland is preparing to fight. Mayor Bibb has assembled a legal team to explore options for blocking the move or suing for breach of contract. City Council is considering resolutions condemning the deal, and community groups are organizing grassroots opposition. But Haslam has momentum. He has political allies, he has money, and he has a PR machine that will spin this as progress and economic development, no matter how much damage it causes. The $100 million settlement that Haslam revealed at the beginning of the press conference has been somewhat overshadowed by the stadium news, exactly as his PR team intended. But investigative journalists are digging into it, and more details are starting to leak. Multiple news outlets have filed Freedom of Information Act requests trying to unseal court documents related to the settlement. Reporters are tracking down former Browns employees who might be willing to talk despite NDAs. And legal experts are analyzing whether Haslam's announcement itself violated any confidentiality provisions. If the full details of that settlement become public, if the allegations of discrimination, harassment, and financial improprieties are proven, it could reignite calls for Haslam to sell the team. The NFL has the authority to force an owner to sell if they engage in conduct detrimental to the league. And if Haslam settled a $100 million lawsuit to avoid having evidence of serious misconduct go public, that could qualify. But the NFL historically protects its owners. The league didn't force Jerry Richardson to sell the Carolina Panthers until his sexual harassment scandal became so public that they had no choice. They didn't force Daniel Snyder to sell the Washington Commanders until years of documented toxic workplace behavior and financial misconduct forced their hand. Haslam will likely survive this because the NFL wants to avoid the bad publicity of forcing an owner out. But his reputation is permanently damaged. As for the stadium deal, the next few months will determine whether it actually happens. Brook Park has to vote, the county has to vote, the state has to vote, and at each stage there will be opposition, protests, and political battles. Cleveland will fight to keep the Browns downtown. Taxpayer advocacy groups will fight against public financing. Community organizations will fight against economic exclusion.
But Jimmy Haslam has shown over and over again that he doesn't care about public opinion, community impact, or doing the right thing. He cares about money and control. And if he can build a $2.4 billion stadium that makes him billions in profit, while taxpayers foot most of the bill, he'll do it no matter how many people he hurts along the way. Jimmy Haslam just revealed a $100 million secret settlement and a $2.4 billion stadium scheme that's going to reshape Cleveland and expose the ugliest truth about how billionaires exploit cities and taxpayers. The settlement involves serious allegations that he paid to bury. The stadium deal is corporate welfare at its worst. And the people of Cleveland are about to find out just how little their loyalty means to an owner who only cares about profit. The fight is just beginning, and the future of the Browns hangs in the balance.